I agreed to this engagement for reasons that had nothing to do with love, but somewhere along the way, I've started accidentally falling for my fiancé, and I absolutely hate myself for it, because this was never supposed to happen, and now I don't know what to do with these feelings. This whole situation began on Thanksgiving when my cousin Jessica revealed her third engagement. And yes, you heard correctly. Third time's the charm, apparently. My mother then adopted that familiar expression, where she started mentally tallying the number of grandchildren I wasn't providing. Before she could launch into her usual discourse, I impulsively declared, "Oh yes, I'm engaged, too." A profound silence fell over the table, followed by an explosion of shouts and embraces. My mother immediately began inquiring about potential venues before I even grasped the magnitude of what I'd done. I spent the entire drive home contemplating if I could convincingly simulate my own demise. So, on Monday, I found myself at work, experiencing a complete mental collapse in the supply closet when Richard entered, searching for paper. We shared the same mundane financial firm, typically exchanging complaints about Excel spreadsheets. However, he discovered me weeping, and I confessed everything. This man looked at me and stated, "I'll do it for $2,000. It turned out his student loan obligations were pressing, and he needed immediate funds. We literally drafted a contract on his laptop, surrounded by office supplies. The stipulations were straightforward: no actual physical contact beyond hand-holding, a breakup after Jessica's wedding, and naturally, a division of any gifts received. We should have realized our predicament when we couldn't synchronize our narrative at the initial dinner. He claimed we met at a coffee shop, while I insisted it was a work conference, and my sister Amy instantly detected the inconsistency. My mother fully embraced wedding planner mode, dragging us to venues far beyond my financial reach. I depleted my credit card on deposits, feigning interest in floral arrangements. At one location, they inquired about our first dance song, and Richard, in a moment of panic, blurted out, "Don't stop believin' not." I wish the ground would swallow me. But then he grasped my hand and fabricated an elaborate tale about never ceasing to believe we would find each other. Even the wedding coordinator became teary-eyed. His mother discovered our secret in the third week. She telephoned during our fabricated date night, which was merely us consuming takeout in the office. She began lamenting about grandchildren, and Richard appeared as if he'd been struck. That's when he disclosed that his former partner, Priya, had betrayed him with his closest friend, and he had essentially abandoned the concept of relationships altogether. But then, something subtly shifted. He started bringing me coffee without being asked. I would send him amusing memes at midnight. We effortlessly dominated everyone at couples game night. My father later drew me aside and remarked he had never witnessed me looking so at ease with anyone, and I felt utterly wretched. My therapist consistently labeled it self-sabotage, and I thought, yes, thank you for that profound revelation. My nephew's birthday celebration was challenging. Andrew persistently made sarcastic remarks about my sudden engagement, and Richard swiftly silenced him. Later, I observed him pushing my nephew on the swings, inventing intricate stories, and I had to depart because it felt too natural. When his former partner messaged, desiring to converse, he immediately showed me, and we both pretended it was inconsequential. But I noticed his hands trembling. My mother telephoned that evening, shedding joyful tears about both her daughters finding love, and I actually vomited after we ended the call. The guilt was consuming me. We had established an entire system, complete with shared calendars, joint accounts, and fabricated photographs that appeared more genuine than most actual couples. My other cousin cornered me at Jessica's shower and commented, "Richard looked at you as if you were his entire universe." I dismissed it with a laugh, but found myself struggling to breathe afterward. 3 weeks before the wedding, we attended a cake tasting, and when they inquired about children, I simply lost control. I began crying right there, over the choice between vanilla and chocolate. Richard held my hand and informed them we were simply emotional, and I realized I was no longer crying about the deception. He called that night and stated he could not continue. He explained that pretending to care for me was making him recognize how much he longed for something authentic. I reminded him of our agreement, and he declared that the money was irrelevant. This feeling was compelling him. We decided to endure Jessica's wedding and then terminate our arrangement immediately, rather than a few weeks later. The rehearsal dinner was agonizing. Everyone continuously offered toasts about affection and eternity, while Richard smiled, as if it caused him physical pain. Amy pulled me aside and confessed she sensed something amiss, but she had never seen me allow someone in like this, and perhaps I should strive to preserve it. I discovered Richard on the balcony later, and we simply stood there, observing the traffic below. He inquired if I ever considered what might have transpired had we met outside of our workplace. I affirmed that I had, which unequivocally violated Section 3 of our contract regarding hypotheticals. I retired for the night with absolutely no clarity on what course of action to take. On the wedding day, the reception hall doors swung open, and I stepped inside, my heart thumping against my ribs. The room gleamed with delicate lights and white roses, filled with relatives I had been misleading for months. Richard stood near the bar, his tie slightly askew, nursing what appeared to be his third whiskey. Our gazes connected across the room, and he began to approach me, but my mother intercepted him first. She seized his arm and guided him toward the dance floor, leaving me isolated by the gift table. My hands quivered as I watched their conversation. Her gestures were animated, while he simply nodded along. Then she gestured toward me, and his complexion paled. My stomach plummeted. Mom advanced, her expression unreadable. She took my arm and led me through the throng, past cousins capturing selfies and Uncle Jerry performing his dreadful robot dance. We ended up in the hotel's side parlor, vacant save for extra chairs and a wilting centerpiece. Sit, she instructed, closing the door behind us. I sank into a chair, my gown gathering awkwardly around my knees. She paced before me, her heels clicking on the polished floor. The silence extended until I yearned to scream. I know, she finally uttered, my mouth becoming parched. Know what about you and Richard? That it's fabricated. She ceased pacing and faced me. I've been aware for months. The room seemed to sway. I clutched the chair arms, attempting to comprehend her words. How? I telephoned his office in January. I intended to surprise you both with lunch reservations. Her voice fractured. His colleague answered and stated Richard wasn't there. That he was likely at home since you two weren't genuinely dating anyway. Tears welled in my eyes. All those months of intricate falsehoods, the strain, the remorse, and she had been cognizant the entire time. I braced myself for the outburst, the disappointment, the lecture on integrity and familial principles. Instead, she collapsed into the chair beside me and began to weep. Mom, I reached for her hand, but she withdrew, concealing her face. My mother passed away when I was 32, she murmured through her fingers. A brain aneurysm. One day, she was organizing my sister's baby shower. The next, she was gone. I had heard this narrative previously, but never articulated in such a manner. Never with her voice faltering on every word. She never witnessed my wedding. Never met her grandchildren. Never got to see me content. Mom lowered her hands, mascara streaking down her cheeks. And I am terrified, Angelica. Terrified that something will befall me before I see you genuinely happy. My chest constricted. Mom, you're healthy. Nothing's going to. That's what I thought about my mother. She clasped my hands, gripping too tightly. I pressure you because I am afraid. Every birthday, every holiday, I ponder how many I might have remaining. How many opportunities to see you discover someone who cherishes you as you merit. The tears then flowed, warm and uncontrollable. She drew me into an embrace that carried the scent of her signature perfume and hairspray. We sat there crying while the reception music pulsed through the walls. I'm sorry, I whispered into her shoulder. I'm so sorry for misleading you. I'm sorry for pushing so intensely that you felt compelled. She pulled back, cradling my face. But darling, that young man out there, the way he gazes at you isn't feigned. Before I could respond, the door burst open. Richard stood there, breathing heavily, his face flushed. I need to speak with you, he stated, immediately. Mom squeezed my shoulder and departed, closing the door behind her. Richard paced the same path she had, running his fingers through his hair. What's amiss? I inquired, though everything felt wrong. He halted and faced me. I received a job offer. Seattle, a senior analyst position with a signing bonus that would eliminate my loans. The words struck like physical blows. Seattle, 3,000 miles away. Of course, this would transpire now. That's wonderful, I managed. Is it? He chuckled, but the sound was broken. Because I've been staring at the offer letter for 3 days, and all I can contemplate is how I don't wish to leave your loans. Forget the loans. He collapsed into my mother's vacated chair. I've been convincing myself this entire endeavor was about money, but that's nonsense. I could have found alternative methods to repay them. My heart accelerated. Then why? Because I'm an imbecile who required an excuse to spend time with you. He met my eyes. Because after Priya, I persuaded myself I was finished with relationships. But then you wept in that supply closet and requested me to be your fabricated boyfriend. And I thought, here's a means to be near someone without the inherent risk. Richard, except there's no such thing as artificial emotions, is there? Every dinner with your parents, every absurd wedding venue, every instance you held my hand, I became a little more deeply invested. He rose abruptly. I've been utilizing this pretense of a relationship to avoid acknowledging I desire a genuine one with you. The door reopened. Amy peered in, her eyes wide. Apologies for interrupting, but Jessica is about to cut the cake, and Mom is looking for both of you. She paused, observing our expressions. Is everything all right? No, I replied, standing on unsteady legs. But it will be. We followed Amy back to the reception. The crowd assembled around the cake table where Jessica and her new husband posed with a knife. I located my parents near the front. My mother's makeup freshly reapplied. I need to do something, I informed Richard. He nodded, comprehending without requiring an explanation. That was always our dynamic, even when we were merely pretending. I pushed through the crowd until I reached the microphone stand. The DJ appeared bewildered but handed it over. The room quieted, hundreds of eyes turning toward me. Hello, everyone. My apologies for the interruption. My voice trembled. I realized this is Jessica's special day, and I promised to be brief. Jessica nodded, curious yet supportive. My throat felt like rough paper. Most of you are aware that Richard and I became engaged a few months ago. I found his gaze in the crowd. What you don't know is that it originated as a fabrication. Gasps rippled through the room. Uncle Jerry dropped his beverage. My mother stepped forward, but my father restrained her. I panicked at Thanksgiving and declared I was engaged when I was not. Then I compensated Richard to pose as my fiancé. The words spilled out more rapidly. We had an agreement, stipulations, a termination date. Andrew smirked from his table, feeling vindicated. Other relatives murmured behind their hands. I pressed on, but somewhere between simulated venue tours and feigned date nights, something transformed. He became my closest confidant. The individual I message when I cannot sleep, the one who understands precisely how I prefer my coffee. My voice faltered. I've spent months deceiving all of you, and I apologize. You deserve better. Richard deserves better. The truth is, I continued, now looking directly at him, I no longer desire anything artificial. I don't want agreements and regulations and expiration dates. I want something messy and authentic and intricate. I want Angelica. A voice interrupted my confession, not Richard's, not supportive or understanding. My Aunt Renee stood near the back, her expression as sharp as shattered glass. My father's elder sister had always been distinct from the rest of the family. Where they were warm, she was calculating. Where they forgave, she remembered. How touching, she remarked, her voice carrying despite the distance. Though I must wonder what else you've been concealing. The room shifted, attention ricocheting between us. Something in her tone made my skin prickle. Renee, my father cautioned. She disregarded him, advancing with deliberate strides. I mean, if you could lie about something as sacred as an engagement, what else might you be hiding? I just disclosed the truth to everyone. I stated into the microphone. Did you? She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Did you inform them about the funds you borrowed from your grandmother's estate? The family business accounts you've been managing? My blood ran cold. I had not taken anything. But the manner in which she articulated it, the careful emphasis, made it sound damning. That's enough, Richard interjected, stepping forward. Renee directed her predatory smile toward him. Oh, the ersatz fiancé speaks. Tell me, did she compensate you from the family funds? Cease this, Amy demanded, moving to my side. But Renee was not finished. She retrieved her phone, scrolling with theatrical precision. An interesting fact about family businesses, paper trails, signatures, elements that can be misinterpreted. My legs felt weak. The microphone slipped in my perspiring grip. Around us, relatives whispered, the atmosphere shifting from shock about my revelation to something more sinister. What is it you desire? I asked, her smile broadening. What I've always wanted. What should have been rightfully mine. The reception hall fell silent, save for the distant clatter of kitchen personnel. Renee's heels clicked against the marble floor as she approached the microphone stand, her movements measured and predatory. The family business, she continued, holding up her phone like incriminating evidence. The one your father established from nothing. The one that should have been inherited by the eldest child. My father stepped forward from the crowd, his face flushed. We've discussed this. You received your portion when you divorced Marcus. My portion? Renee's laughter was bitter. 20%, while you retained controlling interest, while your precious daughters received positions they never earned. I clutched the microphone more tightly. I work in accounts receivable. I process invoices and pursue payments. That is all. Is it? She swiped through her phone. Because I possess some very intriguing documentation here. Transfers, signatures, all bearing your name. Richard moved closer to the microphone stand, positioning himself between Renee and me. Behind him, I saw my mother clutching my father's arm, her earlier tears replaced by bewilderment. You are lying, Amy asserted, her voice cutting through the tension. Angelica would never. Wouldn't she? Renee turned to address the assembly. She just confessed to deceiving all of you for months, paying someone to pretend to love her. What else might she be capable of? My cousin Nathan rose from his table. Aunt Renee, this is Jessica's wedding. Can't this wait? No, it cannot. Renee's veneer of civility dissolved. I've waited 40 years while my brother showed favoritism, while he prepared his daughters to assume control of what should have been mine. The microphone feedback shrieked as I adjusted my grip. Around the room, relatives shifted uncomfortably. Jessica stood frozen by the cake, her new husband's arm around her shoulders. "Show us then," I challenged, my voice steadier than I felt. "Exhibit these supposed documents to everyone." Renee's smile reappeared. She connected her phone to the reception hall's projection system with practiced ease. The delicate lights dimmed as financial documents materialized on the wall behind the head table. 3 months ago, she narrated, $50,000 transferred from the business account to a personal account. Your signature on the authorization. I stared at the projected image, my stomach churning. It was my signature, but I had never approved that transfer. The account number was not even mine. "That is not my account," I stated into the microphone. "Of course, you would claim that." Renee clicked to the next image. "Here is another. 75,000, 2 months ago." My father pushed through the crowd, scrutinizing the projection. "These are fabrications. Angelica does not have access to those accounts." "Doesn't she?" Renee produced a folder from her handbag. "I possess the account access logs right here. Her login credentials, her password alterations." Richard seized the folder before she could distribute copies. Flipping through the pages, his expression darkened with each document. "These timestamps," he remarked slowly. "Half of them are from when we were together. I can prove she was not at the office." Renee's eyes narrowed. "The fake boyfriend provides an alibi. How convenient." "It's not fake," Richard stated quietly. But the room overheard every word. "Perhaps it began that way, but nothing." Renee snatched the folder back. "This family has been hemorrhaging funds, and now we understand why. The favored daughter required money for her elaborate charade." "That's absurd," Amy protested. "Angelica maxed out her credit cards for artificial wedding deposits. Why would she embezzle money and then incur debt?" "To conceal her activities, obviously." Renee addressed the crowd again. "To make it appear she is struggling while diverting funds elsewhere." My hands trembled as I lowered the microphone. The room spun slightly, faces blurring together. Cousins, who had embraced me an hour prior, now whispered behind their hands. Uncle Jerry had sobered up remarkably quickly, his expression grim. "I need air," I mumbled, pushing past Richard toward the exit. "Fleeing?" Renee called after me. "Just as you fled from the truth about your engagement." I reached the hallway before the tears came. The luxurious carpet muffled my footsteps as I escaped toward the elevator. Behind me, I heard Richard calling my name, but I could not face him. Could not face any of them. The elevator doors opened to reveal my grandmother's sister, Aunt Catherine, leaning heavily on her walking aid. She had traveled from Florida for the wedding, her first family gathering in years. "Angelica," she peered at me through thick spectacles. "What is the matter, dear?" I could not speak through my sobs. She maneuvered her walker to create space, patting the elevator wall. "Come in, child. Let us get you settled." The doors closed on the pandemonium behind us. Aunt Catherine pressed the button for the 3rd floor, humming softly as we ascended. She asked no questions, demanded no explanations. When we arrived at her room, she simply offered me tissues and indicated the sofa. "Now then," she stated, settling into an armchair with considerable effort. "Tell me everything." So I did. The entire convoluted truth poured out, the fabricated engagement, the genuine emotions, Renee's accusations. Aunt Catherine listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or making a clicking sound with her tongue. Renee was always a difficult individual, she remarked when I concluded. Even as a child, always convinced the world owed her more than she received. But those documents can be falsified. She leaned forward. "I may be elderly, but I am not foolish. I have witnessed numerous forged signatures in my time. Why would she do this?" Aunt Catherine sighed. "Your grandfather's will. He bequeathed the business to your father with a stipulation. If your father was ever proven unfit or his heirs committed fraud, control would revert to Renee." My blood ran cold. "She's attempting to incriminate me to acquire the company." "It appears so." She struggled to her feet. "Come on. We are returning down there." "I cannot." Everyone believes. Everyone believes what Renee desires them to believe." She gripped her walker firmly. "But I know something she does not." We made our way back to the elevator. My phone vibrated incessantly with messages from Richard, Amy, Mom. I disregarded them all, concentrating on Aunt Catherine's determined, shuffling gait. The reception hall had descended into utter chaos upon our return. Families huddled in defensive clusters, voices raised in accusation and defense. Renee held court near the projection screen, distributing copies of her alleged evidence to anyone willing to accept them. "There she is," someone shouted, and heads turned in our direction. Richard appeared at my side immediately. "Are you all right? I've been searching everywhere." I'm fine. I lied, then noticed his sleeve. Is that blood? Andrew took a swing at me. He touched his split lip gingerly. He claimed I was part of your deception. Enough. Aunt Catherine's voice carried surprising authority for someone her age. She made her way to the microphone stand, her walker clicking against the floor. All of you, be seated and be silent. The room became still. Even Renee paused mid-gesture, papers clutched in her manicured hands. I've observed this family tearing itself apart for decades, Aunt Catherine continued. Always squabbling over money, position, who received what. Well, I am done remaining quiet. She reached into her purse, extracting a manila envelope. Renee, dear, you might wish to sit down for this. I do not accept directives from the woman who possesses your divorce settlement papers. Aunt Catherine smiled sweetly. The genuine ones, I mean, not the version you submitted to the court. Renee's face drained of color. You're bluffing. Am I? She opened the envelope. Marcus sent these to me before his passing. It seems he felt remorseful about assisting you in concealing assets during your divorce, helping you claim destitution while secretly accumulating millions. That's a falsehood, I stated. Is it? Aunt Catherine produced a document. Bank statements from the Cayman Islands. Signed by you and Marcus. Dated during your divorce proceedings when you claimed to be impoverished. My father stepped forward, examining the papers. His expression shifted from bewilderment to fury. You concealed $3 million. I granted you a settlement based on erroneous information. It's not what it appears, Renee stammered. Amusing, Amy remarked coldly. That's what you wouldn't permit Angelica to say. Aunt Catherine was not finished. There is more. It appears Renee has been accessing the company's systems after hours, not to review finances, but to generate false records. You cannot prove that, Renee snapped. Actually, I can. Richard stepped forward, holding up his phone. I had a friend in IT security conduct a trace on those fabricated documents. The metadata indicates they were created last week, not months ago, all from an IP address registered to Renee's residence. The room erupted. Relatives who had been suspicious of me now directed their anger toward Renee. She recoiled from the crowd, her meticulously constructed attack crumbling. You do not comprehend, she stated desperately. I deserve that company. I am the eldest. It should have been mine. You received precisely what you deserved, my father stated quietly. A fair share, which you apparently augmented through deceit. Renee's eyes darted around the room, seeking allies and finding none. Even her own children distanced themselves, shock and disappointment evident on their faces. This is not over, she hissed, grabbing her handbag. I will sue. I will. You will depart, Aunt Catherine interrupted. Now, before I decide to share these documents with the authorities. Renee fled, her heels clicking frantically against the floor. The room remained silent until the door swung shut behind her. Jessica was the first to speak. Well, that was quite dramatic. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. She approached where I stood, still clinging to Richard's arm for support. I am so sorry, I began. I ruined your wedding. Are you jesting? She hugged me tightly. No one will ever forget this reception. Furthermore, you salvaged the family business. That supersedes any wedding disruption. But I lied to everyone. About Richard, about being in love. She pulled back, smiling. Honey, the only person you were deceiving was yourself. The DJ, who had been hiding behind his equipment during the confrontation, tentatively resumed playing music. Couples began to return to the dance floor, the crisis transitioning into family lore. My mother appeared at my side, mascara smudged, but smiling. We need to discuss your communication abilities, young lady. But first, dance with your young man. He's not. I began, then paused. Actually, I don't know what we are anymore. Richard extended his hand. We are two individuals who are quite inept at pretense. Would you like to attempt being truly adept at the genuine article? I took his hand, allowing him to guide me onto the dance floor. Around us, relatives whispered and gestured. But for once, I disregarded appearances. So, I stated as we swayed to the music, Seattle. I declined the offer this morning. He spun me gently. I concluded I should remain. Someone needs to prevent you from making agreements with random colleagues in supply closets. That was a singular occurrence, I protested. Good, because I am not sharing you with anyone else, genuine or otherwise. Amy danced past with her husband, giving me a thumbs up. My father led my mother in a careful waltz, both observing us with tender expressions. Even Aunt Catherine had found a partner, shuffling slowly but resolutely with Uncle Jerry. I apologize, I stated quietly, for involving you in this predicament, for the agreement, for providing me with a reason to fall in love with you. Richard pulled me closer. Indeed, how dare you? The contract explicitly stipulated no falling in love, I reminded him. Fortuitous that I am terrible at adhering to regulations. He grinned. Besides, you violated it first. No hypotheticals, remember? Yet you continued to ponder, what if ... When did you realize? I inquired. That it was no longer a pretense. The venue with the dreadful coffee. You automatically ordered mine black with 2 sugars without being asked. Such a minor detail, but... He shrugged. Your mother's call when you confided in me about Priya. You entrusted me with that pain. I met his gaze. No one was compensating you to be vulnerable. The finest investment I ever made, he stated. Even if I never see that $2,000. About that, I winced. My credit cards are maxed. Can I repay you in installments? How about we consider it settled? He dipped me dramatically. You helped me realize I was prepared for something authentic, and that is worth more than money. The song concluded, transitioning to a slower melody. Other couples joined us on the floor, the earlier drama fading into background noise. Tomorrow would bring inquiries, explanations, likely some awkward family meals. But tonight, in this moment, everything felt precisely right. Hey, Richard suddenly remarked. Want to know something amusing? What? I actually despise that song. Don't Stop Believin'. It's overplayed and cliched. I laughed, genuinely surprised. Then why did you select it? Because in that moment, looking at you, it was the only thought I had. Don't stop believing we'd find each other. He shook his head. Even my panic responses are sentimental when it pertains to you. I love you. I blurted out, then immediately covered my mouth. Sorry, that's probably too soon. We should genuinely date first. Get to know each other without agreements. And he kissed me, interrupting my rambling. Around us, relatives cheered and clinked glasses. When we finally separated, both of us were grinning foolishly. I love you, too, he stated. Have for months. Probably since you wept unattractively over wedding cake flavors. That was not unattractive weeping, I protested. It truly was. It's not everywhere. Very appealing. I playfully struck his shoulder, but I was laughing. Genuine laughter, not the polite kind I had perfected during our fabricated dates. The remainder of the reception passed in a blur of congratulations, inquiries, and dance floor mishaps. Andrew eventually apologized for striking Richard, though he still seemed skeptical. Aunt Catherine held court at a corner table, regaling younger relatives with tales of family scandals that made ours appear tame. As the evening concluded, Richard and I found ourselves on the same balcony where we had engaged in our contract-violating conversation the previous night. The city sparkled below us, brimming with potential. So what happens now? I inquired, leaning against the railing. Now, he wrapped his arms around me from behind. Now we date like ordinary people. No agreements, no regulations, no predetermined termination dates. That sounds terrifying, I admitted. The best things usually are. He pressed a kiss to my temple. But hey, we already know we're compatible. We've met each other's families, survived a crisis together, and you know precisely how I prefer my coffee. Plus, we have all those artificial photographs that turned out to be authentic memories, I added. See, we're already ahead of most couples. He turned me to face him. Though we should probably capture some new ones where we're not pretending. Agreed, I stated, then paused. But no more agreements. No more agreements, he concurred. Just promises. The reception officially concluded at midnight, but our group lingered in the hotel bar afterward. Jessica and her new husband joined us, still in their wedding attire, but relaxed and joyful. Amy nestled against her husband, occasionally casting me knowing glances. Even my mother and father remained awake past their usual bedtime, my father nursing a whiskey while my mother switched to water. So, Jessica stated, raising her champagne glass, to family, the genuine kind and the kind we select. To truth, Amy added eventually. To agreements, Richard stated with a grin, and breaking them. To Aunt Catherine, I finished. And perfect timing. We clinked glasses, the sound bright and clear in the quiet bar. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, addressing Renee's threats, explaining everything to extended family, figuring out how to integrate our fabricated relationship into a genuine one. But tonight, surrounded by the individuals who mattered most, those difficulties seemed manageable. You know, Mom remarked thoughtfully, we still possess all those venue deposits. Mom, no, I groaned. We literally just ascertained we are genuinely dating. I'm merely suggesting. Waste not, want not. She winked at Richard. Though perhaps wait until you've been together more than 5 minutes before planning another wedding. 5 months, Richard corrected. We've technically been together 5 months. Do artificial months count? Amy inquired. Everything counts, I stated firmly. The good, the bad, the contractually obligated. It's all a part of our narrative. Our very peculiar narrative, Richard added. The best ones always are, my father stated, surprising everyone with his philosophical contribution. Your mother and I met when I accidentally struck her with my car door. Not precisely Romeo and Juliet. You never disclosed that to me, I stated. Some stories require the opportune moment to be shared. He smiled at my mother. Like yours. It might have commenced as a deception, but observe where it led. The hotel bar closed at 2, but none of us stirred. Jessica's new husband ordered another round, while Richard traced patterns on my hand beneath the table. My phone buzzed with messages from relatives who had departed the reception early, all variations of what had just transpired that I would address tomorrow. I still cannot believe Renee attempted that, Amy stated, shaking her head. 40 years of resentment just erupting like that. My father set down his whiskey with more force than necessary. She's been planning this. Those forged documents were not hastily assembled. But why now? My mother inquired. Why at Jessica's wedding? Aunt Catherine cleared her throat from her corner booth. Because she knew everyone would be present. Maximum audience for her little spectacle. The bartender dimmed the lights, a not-so-subtle hint that we had overstayed our welcome. We gathered our belongings slowly, no one ready for the night to conclude. Richard assisted Aunt Catherine with her walker while I collected abandoned champagne flutes from our table. Wait, Jessica suddenly interjected. Where's Renee staying? She reserved a room here, correct? We all froze. The same hotel. Probably the same floor. My father retrieved his phone, scrolling through messages. 3rd floor, he confirmed. Room 312. I am on the 3rd floor, Aunt Catherine stated quietly. Room 318. The elevator ride felt interminable. We crowded in together, Aunt Catherine's walker occupying most of the space. When the doors opened on the 3rd floor, the hallway stretched empty in both directions. Normal, quiet, but something felt amiss. Richard stepped out first, then helped Aunt Catherine maneuver her walker through the doors. I followed, my heels sinking into the plush carpet. Room 312's door stood slightly ajar, a sliver of light cutting across the hallway. Remain here, my father stated, moving toward the room. But Aunt Catherine was already shuffling forward, her walker clicking against the door frame as she pushed inside. We discovered Renee at the desk, surrounded by papers and manila folders. Her laptop was open to what appeared to be bank records. Breaking and entering now. Renee did not look up from her screen. How predictable. Your door was open, Amy pointed out. Was it? Renee's fingers flew across the keyboard. Must have been the wind. Richard moved closer to the desk, examining the papers scattered across its surface. His expression darkened. These are personnel files from the company. Public records, Renee stated smoothly. Remarkable what one can discover when one knows where to search. My father snatched one of the folders, flipping through its contents. These are not public. These are internal HR documents. How did you? Does it matter? Renee finally looked up, her eyes gleaming with something that made my skin crawl. The damage is already inflicted. Even if Aunt Catherine's small revelation exonerated Angelica, doubt lingers. Investors abhor scandal. Clients despise drama. You're attempting to sabotage the company out of malice. My mother's voice cracked. Your own family's business? My family. Renee laughed, sharp and bitter. You mean the family that excluded me? That bestowed everything upon my younger brother while I received mere scraps. You received 20%, my father stated through gritted teeth. Plus the settlement. Plus nothing. Renee slammed her laptop shut. 20% of what should have been entirely mine. Do you comprehend what it is like watching him establish something I helped initiate? Watching him assign positions to his daughters while my children receive nothing. Your children selected their own paths, Aunt Catherine interjected. Jonathan is a physician. Joni operates her own restaurant. They did not desire. They were not afforded the option. Renee stood abruptly, papers cascading to the floor. He ensured that. Kept them at arm's length. Made them feel like outsiders in their own family. Richard bent to gather the scattered documents, but Renee's heel came down on his hand. He recoiled with a hiss of pain. Do not touch those, she warned. Enough, I stated, finding my voice. What do you truly desire, Renee? She studied me for an extended moment, something calculating in her expression. What I've always wanted, what is rightfully mine. The company, my father stated flatly. Not merely the company. Renee moved around the desk, her movements predatory. Recognition. Respect. My place in this family's history. You possessed that, Amy protested. You squandered it with falsehoods and manipulation. I squandered it. Renee's voice rose. I was pushed away, marginalized, treated like a mere footnote in my own family's narrative. Jessica appeared in the doorway, still in her wedding gown, but with athletic shoes replacing her heels. Security is en route. Someone complained about noise. Renee's face went pale. She lunged for her laptop. But Richard was swifter, snatching it away. She then grabbed for the folders, clutching them to her chest like protective armor. Those will not assist you, Aunt Catherine stated calmly. Whatever scheme you are devising, it is concluded. You know nothing, Renee spat. You've been in Florida enjoying retirement while I've been here, contending for what is mine. Contending? My father stepped forward. You label forgery and fraud as contending? I call it survival. Renee retreated toward the window, papers crumbling in her grasp. You have no comprehension of what I've sacrificed, what I've lost. You lost it yourself, my mother stated quietly. Every decision you made led to this point. Two security guards appeared in the doorway, their expressions professionally neutral. Jessica whispered something to them, gesturing toward Renee. Ma'am, the taller guard stated. We have received complaints. I will require you to accompany us. I am a guest here, Renee protested. I have a room. Not anymore. The hotel manager appeared behind the guards. Given tonight's disturbance and multiple complaints, we are requesting you vacate the premises. Renee's grip on the folders tightened. You cannot do this. Actually, we can. The manager held up a tablet displaying security footage. We possess video of you accessing areas you were not authorized to enter, including the business center after hours. My stomach plummeted. The business center, where the reception's projection system was controlled, where she had uploaded those fabricated documents. You trespassed on hotel property? Richard inquired, incredulous. Renee's facade finally shattered completely. I did what I had to do. What none of you would ever comprehend. The security guards moved forward, flanking her. She clutched the folders more tightly, papers spilling onto the floor, bank statements, personnel files, photographs of family gatherings with faces circled in red ink. How long have you been planning this? I inquired, staring at the scattered evidence of her obsession. Since the day he excluded me, she stated, her eyes fixed on my father. Since the day you decided your daughters were worth more than your sister. I never. My father began. Save it. Renee allowed the guards to guide her toward the door. This is not over. You can expel me, but I possess information. I have copies. I have. You have nothing, Aunt Catherine interrupted. Except a future explaining yourself to the authorities. Renee jerked against the guard's hold. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Aunt Catherine's voice was unwavering. I've been patient for 40 years. That ends tonight. The guards escorted Renee out, her protests echoing down the hallway. We stood amidst the wreckage of her room, surrounded by evidence of months, perhaps years, of meticulous planning. Richard knelt to gather more papers, wincing as he flexed his injured hand. Allow me to see, I stated, gently taking his hand. A purple contusion was already forming where Renee's heel had made contact. It's fine, he stated. But let me examine it anyway. We need to review all of this, my father stated, surveying the disarray, to ascertain what else she might have orchestrated. Tomorrow, my mother stated firmly. Tonight, we rest. We process. A crash reverberated from the hallway. We rushed out to discover Renee on the floor, her ankle twisted at an unnatural angle. The security guards knelt beside her, one already summoning medical assistance. Do not touch me, she shrieked, attempting to crawl away. This is assault. I will sue everyone. The hotel, the family, everyone. Ma'am, you need to remain still, the guard stated. You fell. We were barely touching you. Liar. But her movement sent fresh pain across her face. My ankle. The EMTs arrived within minutes, professional and efficient. They stabilized her ankle while she continued to issue threats of lawsuits, her voice growing hoarse. As they loaded her onto a stretcher, she locked eyes with me. This is your fault, she hissed. All of it. If you hadn't fabricated your engagement, none of this would have transpired. You were correct, I stated quietly. I lied. But you chose how to react. You chose to forge documents, to infiltrate systems, to attempt to dismantle your own family. My family destroyed me first, she stated as they wheeled her away. The hallway fell silent. Hotel guests peered out from partially open doors, drawn by the commotion. The manager apologized profusely, offering complimentary rooms and free breakfast. We declined, too exhausted to care about amenities. I will remain and attend to the room, my father stated, gesturing toward Renee's open door, ensuring nothing crucial vanishes. I will assist, Richard offered. But I pulled him back. Your hand requires ice, I stated, and we need to converse. We left my father and the hotel manager to sort through Renee's abandoned machinations. The elevator ride to my floor passed in silence, Richard cradling his bruised hand against his chest. In my room, I wrapped ice in a towel while he sat on the bed, observing me with an inscrutable expression. Quite a night, he finally remarked. Not precisely typical wedding reception entertainment. I pressed the ice to his hand, sitting beside him. I am sorry she injured you. Physically or emotionally, he attempted a smile. Because I have endured worse on both counts. This is serious, Richard. She could have fractured your hand. But she didn't. He adjusted the ice with his uninjured hand. And honestly, being stepped on by your aunt is probably the least bizarre thing that has occurred to us. Despite everything, I laughed. Our relationship timeline is absurd. Artificial engagement, genuine emotions, family fraud scheme, antagonist revelation. And now what? Now we ascertain what normalcy entails, he stated. Without agreements or crises or eccentric relatives. Do we even comprehend how to be normal? Only one way to discover. He set aside the ice, taking my hand with his uninjured one. But first, I need to convey something to you. My heart faltered. If this is where you disclose you are also perpetrating fraud, I might shriek. No fraud, just. He took a breath. I did not decline Seattle this morning. The words struck like frigid water. What? I intended to, I planned to, but when I telephoned, they had already filled the position. He squeezed my hand. I spent 3 days paralyzed by indecision, and it cost me the job. Richard, I am so sorry. Your loans will eventually be repaid. That is not the essence. He met my eyes. The essence is, I hesitated because I was fearful, not of remaining, but of admitting why I wished to remain. Why did you wish to remain? You know why. His thumb traced circles on my palm. The same reason you wept over wedding cake. The same reason we transgressed our own regulations. Because somewhere amidst all the pretense, we forgot we were pretending. So what do we do now? Now, he pulled me closer. Now we cease pretending altogether. No more agreements. No more regulations. Just us navigating it as we proceed. That terrifies me, I admitted. Me too. He pressed his forehead to mine. But I would rather be terrified with you than secure with anyone else. A knock interrupted whatever I might have uttered. Amy's voice carried through the door, urgent and strained. Angelica, you need to return upstairs. Immediately. We found them in Aunt Catherine's room, crowded around her laptop. My father appeared pale. My mother gripped his arm, and Amy gestured frantically at the screen. What's wrong? I inquired. Renee sent emails, Amy stated. To the entire client roster, board members, investors, everyone. My legs weakened. Richard observed me as I leaned over to read the screen. The email was lengthy, detailed, and devastating. Renee had presented her version of events, my fabricated engagement, the money she asserted I had embezzled, the family's supposed corruption. But worse, she attached documents, some forged, some authentic, all damaging when presented without context. When? I inquired. Scheduled send, my father stated grimly. Set to go out at 3 in the morning. We have, he checked his watch, 12 minutes. Can we halt it? Not from here. Richard was already retrieving his phone. But I know someone who might assist. He dialed quickly, speaking in rapid technical terms I did not comprehend. The minutes elapsed with agonizing slowness. My mother paced. Amy continuously refreshed the email. Aunt Catherine sat perfectly still, her expression unreadable. Got it, Richard suddenly announced. He's in. He's attempting to access the server. Is that lawful? My mother inquired. Do we care? Amy retorted. Richard's friend worked frantically on the other end of the line. We watched the clock, holding our breath. 2:57, 2:58, 2:59. Done, Richard declared. Emails deleted from the server. Crisis averted. The room collectively exhaled. My father sank into a chair, his head in his hands. My mother rubbed his back, while Amy high-fived Richard. We are not finished, Aunt Catherine stated quietly. Renee will not cease. Not after tonight. Then what do we do? I inquired. We safeguard ourselves, my father stated, raising his head. First thing Monday, we audit everything. Every account, every transaction, every document she might have touched. I will assist, Richard offered. My IT friend owes me favors. We can trace her digital footprint, ascertain what else she might have planned. And I will manage the legal aspect, Aunt Catherine added. My lawyer has been eager for something engaging. This is going to become unpleasant, my mother warned. It already is, Amy pointed out. But we are together. That is what matters. We remained in Aunt Catherine's room until dawn broke over the city. Plans were formulated, strategies discussed, alliances reinforced. By the time exhaustion compelled us to our beds, we possessed a battle plan. Richard escorted me to my room one final time. So much for our normal first date, he remarked. Please, normalcy is overrated. I kissed him softly. Besides, we've already endured artificial engagements and family fraud. Everything else should be effortless. I admire your optimism, he stated, completely unfounded but endearing. I love you, too. I replied, then froze. I mean, I understand what you mean. He kissed me again. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we commence our genuine relationship. No agreements, no drama, just us. But as I closed the door, I knew he was mistaken. The drama was not over. Renee's emails might have been intercepted, but her campaign had just begun. There would be investigations, accusations, family divisions that might never mend. Monday arrived too swiftly. The office felt different, knowing what awaited in the company files. Richard met me at the elevator with coffee and a somber expression. My friend discovered something, he stated quietly. Renee has been in the system for months. She possesses copies of everything. Then we are ruined. Not necessarily. He guided me to a conference room where my father, Amy, and the company's legal counsel awaited. We have alternatives. The subsequent hours blurred together, financial audits, security reviews, HR investigations. Renee had been meticulous, but she had also been careless. Her digital fingerprints were ubiquitous, evidence of her long-planned retaliation. We can substantiate the forgeries, the lawyer announced. But it will be complicated, public, expensive. Proceed, my father stated without hesitation. I will not permit her to dismantle what we have constructed. By noon, official correspondence had been dispatched. By evening, Renee's lawyer telephoned. She desired to negotiate. No, my father stated flatly. She made her selection.